Elizabeth von Arnim, born Marionette Beauchamp Jamaica, 31st, 1866, in Kirribilli Point, Sydney, Australia, was a prolific and much admired writer of the early 20th century. She is best known for her semi-autobiographical novel Elizabeth and Her Garden, 1898, and the charming, beloved The Enchanted April, 1922. Her life, like her writing, was full of contrasts. She navigated between aristocratic circles, domestic life, and the literary world with a wit, insight, and independence that shaped her distinctive voice in English literature. Born to a wealthy merchant family, Elizabeth moved to England when she was 3 years old, where she was raised in a cultured, affluent environment. Her early years were shaped by her family's frequent travels across Europe, which gave her an international perspective that would later embody. As a young woman, she was considered highly intelligent, and her education, although typical for a woman of her class, was supplemented by her own curiosity and voracious reading. At the age of 24, Elizabeth married a Prussian count, Henning August von Arnim-Schlagenthal, and moved to his family estate in northern Germany. It was here that she began her writing career, inspired by the often difficult and isolated life she led as a wife in rural Germany. Her first book, Elizabeth and Her Garden, published anonymously in 1898, was an instant success. The novel is a semi-autobiographical account of Elizabeth's life in the German countryside, focusing on her love of gardening and nature as a refuge from her stifling domestic life and her often authoritarian husband. The book's humor, wit, and candid portrayal of a woman yearning for independence resonated deeply with readers, and it was reprinted many times, making Elizabeth an international literary star. The success of this work led to her being affectionately known as Elizabeth throughout her career, and she published all of her subsequent novels under this name, often drawing from her own life experiences. Elizabeth's marriage to Henning was increasingly unhappy. Though they had 5 children together, his domineering personality and frequent absences exacerbated her feelings of loneliness. After his death in 1910, she moved to London, where she became a part of literary and intellectual circles. During this period, she became romantically involved with H.G. Wells, a relationship that influenced her writing and personal life. In 1916, Elizabeth married again, this time to John Francis Stanley Russell, the second Earl Russell, brother of the philosopher Bertrand Russell. This marriage, however, was even more troubled than her first, marked by physical and emotional abuse, and it ended in separation. The experience of her unhappy second marriage deepened the themes of personal freedom and the limits of societal expectations that would appear in her later works. Throughout her career, Elizabeth's novels often explored the position of women in society, the difficulties of marriage, and the tension between domestic life and personal freedom. Her heroines were frequently strong-willed, witty women who sought to carve out their own paths in a world that constrained them. The Enchanted April, 1922, one of her most famous works, tells the story of 4 women who rent a villa in Italy to escape their unhappy lives in England, finding personal renewal and joy in the process. The novel's themes of rejuvenation and the healing power of nature were characteristic of Elizabeth's work and continue to captivate readers. Elizabeth was also a close friend of E.M. Forster, who admired her work, and she maintained connections with many leading literary figures of the time. Despite this, she was known for her fiercely independent nature and often lived a reclusive life, preferring the peace and solitude of her gardens, first in Germany and later in Switzerland and the French Riviera. Her later years were spent traveling between Europe and the United States, and she continued writing into her 60s. Her final years were marked by the turmoil of World War II, which deeply affected her, particularly given her family ties to both Germany and England. Elizabeth von Arnim died on February 9, 1941, in Charleston, South Carolina, while living with her daughter. At the time of her death, she was remembered as a beloved author of witty, insightful novels that appealed to readers across Europe and America. Though sometimes overshadowed by more famous literary figures of her time, Elizabeth von Arnim's works have enjoyed a resurgence in popularity. Her nuanced explorations of women's inner lives, her sharp humor, and her eloquent depictions of the joys and difficulties of life have earned her a place as one of the most distinctive voices of early 20th century literature. Her novels, particularly The Enchanted April, continue to be celebrated for their timeless appeal and their gentle yet pointed critique of societal norms.